We'll talk about family and friends. I do think that the work relationships give us a view into life we otherwise wouldn't have. I remember working with someone who was the only a millennial, and the 40-year-old she was working with didn't understand her at all. They didn't understand how she spoke. They didn't know why she only wanted to text. She didn't want to talk on the phone. So sometimes you get situations that would only come to you in a workplace. But let's look at friends and family, and we'll talk through some of these slides, and then we'll do the reverse order. We'll start with Jonathan, but I like this one in the middle. You guys can see this now. In my family, crazy doesn't skip a generation. Like we're all down with the crazy. There's a woman here from Twitter who says, describing women who clean and run a house, look after multiple children, source and prepare food for a spouse as not working is surely one of the most successful conspiracies of the 20th century. So we do have a trend about pulling people out of your children out of school and homeschooling, trying to live on one income and allowing, someone to stay at home. And so maybe being more deliberate about the lifestyle you're leading and not just flowing through the consumer culture that many of us grew up with. So there's one at the top here that says, having those weird conversations with your friends and thinking, if anyone heard us right now, we'd be put into a mental hospital. So we do have some of those conversations with friends. It's like they don't know the inside story about what we're talking about, but aren't those some of the best friendships where you've done the time together? And then the last one here is your expectation of the family you're building. Super cool family, even a dog that's well groomed and beautifully behaved. And then the reality of the family you actually built. I think this is Family Guy. So it's like, there's the goal of your family, and then how's your family actually turned out? And those might not be the same thing. So we'll jump from these memes. And Jonathan, do you want to start for us? We'll stop sharing here.
Family and friendships.
Family and friendships and cycles those go through. Yes.
It's the closest ones that we have. Besides the relationship with ourselves.
There's an old mob saying that I'll share with you. Sometimes I share with clients. The mob bosses would say, your enemies stab you in the back. You never see it coming. Your friends and family, they stab you in the front because you opened your heart to them. You let them in close. And so if you're going to be really hurt by someone, probably friends and family. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to friends and family, I have developed a unique view when it comes to that, based on seeing reality as it is, not as I want it to be, or as expected to be, because society norms and stuff. But it is important first understand that there is a relationship, whether you want it or not. There is a relationship with the family, right? So it's there. And when you're younger, it's a little different, because it seems like you have no choice. Let's say you don't like your younger sister or older brother. They're still your brothers. It's not like you can just get rid of them, even if you want to. I tried, trust me. You can't. You can't. You can't. They just appear over and over again. So they're always there. But then you grow up. You become you start taking care of yourself, and then, in my experience, you have to be very selective of the coming down to energy. Which energy are you going to share yourself with, or allow to be yourself, be surrounded by? Same with friends. When you're younger, you're pretty much unconscious, so you will make a lot of unconscious friends, which is fine. We all do. But then there comes a point that you have to take responsibility for yourself, because it's someone wise once said that you are the product of the 5 people you hang around with, and it always comes down to it's true. So if all your friends, you make them in an unconscious level, and then you grow up, more likely you're going to have a very hard life. You might be very financially place and in a very good position, but your other dimensions of life, there can be not as pretty. So it's good to, once you become aware, first things first, and taking charge, or like selecting who are you going to be or allow yourself to be surrounded by, especially family members. It's key. Now, this is not easy because they're your family members and they will crucify you if you
So,
think
yeah, share with us how
different.
you do that. You feel like you have a negative family member who wants to exert maybe negative control or something.
Yeah.
How do you
It's
move forward with
I
that?
wouldn't describe them as negative. It's
Okay.
just that they have a different perspective. For example, I can use my older brother as an example. I told him one of the conversations we were having. I was like, "Well, how do I know I have a perspective that is so different from yours that I can see your perspective from above?" He was like, "What do you mean? I'm the oldest one." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah. Let's say that we died today. Are you fucking ready to die?" He's like, "No, no, I'm not ready." I'm like, "Well, that's the thing. Uh, I am. You're not. Why? Because I can see many things, and you're just not. And that doesn't make him negative. It's just it makes him someone that I have to not spend so much time with. Because why would I bring my perspective from from the top of the mountain to down below? It will be all my work and everybody else's work, like all the work that Mirna, Angela, Justin, uh, SpecialK, Brian, or Matthew does, or anybody that is watching will do. It will be for nothing. So that is not fair. To work for nothing, that will be actually stupid. So you have to be very careful who you allow yourself to be surrounded with. If that implies to put away family members, it's totally fine. I will start with, because you don't have to cut all communication, but you can start with sensible things. If you're not prepared to do it like forever, you can be like, "Well, yeah, I would love to see you on Christmas and on your birthday and on the kid's birthday." So you still have some contact. It's not like you're going to cut them for the rest of your life, but you cut the amount of time, and like the relationship, you cut it to a limit. um, Same with friendships. Most friends, they just want to play video games and do nonsense, and the reality is that if you're on a different path, it's not going to do you any good.
I have a
If
question
they're
for you, Jonathan. Do you think that you could
yes,
have
go ahead.
positive, you could have positive relationship, not necessarily negative relationship with someone, and you're not even estranged from them, but you just really, they could be a sibling or a cousin or whatever that maybe you were once close to, but maybe you just have different lives and there's not much crossover, just like you friends come and go. I mean, it's not because you necessarily don't love that individual from a familial perspective. I mean, is that what you're trying to get at when you say it's not necessarily that it's negative, but it could be that they're just in a different perspective or a different
area? It doesn't make them a bad person. It's just that you know better. So because deep down, and because deep down you know that you can be more than you are, and deep down they know that they can be more than they are, but they just don't want to. And let's say that you are working on yourself, right? You're trying, like, you're here, that means somehow you're working on yourself, as we all are. So if they are not, obviously it's going to create some space, but that doesn't make them bad by any means. It's just different.
And it's also, I'm not bringing judgment to that either, if that individual is on a different trajectory in their path, and it's not better or worse or higher or lower than mine. It's just they're on their own path, and mine's just not crossing over theirs as much. Maybe the sacred contract that we had to be born into the same family and raised by the same parents or whatever, or influenced by the same, extended family. It's just, we're doing our own thing and our own paths. And I don't know if it's necessarily always completely.
I will take the sacred contract part out, because most humans have not experienced that as a reality for themselves. So I cannot comment on that, except from a very few experiences I have
Each
had.
individual that goes through a healing journey is healing the karma of their entire lineage, which is the reason why a lineage will choose certain souls to go into a lineage, because they have the best chance of resolving the karma for that particular lineage. So it's an actual, but it also can work against us. There are negative contracts as well.
So to finish the when it comes to friends, so family members, it's easy. Just be like, hey, listen, I love you, but honestly, I will love to see you on Christmas and on your birthday and on your kid's birthday. And I still love you. You're the best older brother. Of course you are. But I will see you on your birthday. No, next. So now you have your friends, that you made in an unconscious level, right? Because they were unconscious. You didn't know the reasons why. It might be because of a sacred past contract that you did.
It could just be that you played on the same baseball team when you were kids.
Or it might be because they were it might be because they like the same color and they like the same girl, or they like who knows. So it's all the different things. But then you become aware of yourself. You want to grow, and then they are still there, and they're like, hey, let's hang out this Saturday. And you're like, well, yeah, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do some coke and some, and you're like, whoa, no, I don't.
Yeah.
You're like, that was fun when I was unconscious. But now, actually, it's not. And how it's going to beneficiate me? It's not going to beneficiate me in any shape or form. So you actually start also. It's hard, but you have to calling them out on you have to make them accountable. It's so easy to make them accountable. Because if it's not going to, and you can be quite selfish, actually. You can be like, well, how is it going to beneficiate me? Let's say that you're just having fun. We're going to the beach. Okay, that sounds fair. But if you're going to the beach and you're going to do something that is going to put you in a situation where you're going to end up locked out, like in jail because they did something stupid, then that doesn't sound very pleasant, isn't it? So you have to be very selfish in that sense. So put your boundary on, and also make them accountable. If they're not adding to your life, actually, I have a saying: friends are problems. And it's not a bad thing. My friends know. My friends know that they are my problems. Like, they know that they're my problems, and I'm like, you're lucky that I accept you as my problem, because honestly, otherwise I would rather just be myself. Why do I have to carry you for the rest of my life? Like, there's no like like, you're so lucky.
Well,
and I am also, in a way. I understand that in their perspective, it's the same back. They just don't say it the way I do, but it's an exchange of energy, and it's beautiful. But it's great to hold anybody that is going to hang around your energy. You must. There's no way around it. You must hold anybody around you accountable at all times.
You can say that you've come through a change. Like, a friend might say, why don't we hang out anymore? You're like, well, I'm just not going to do coke anymore. So when you want to hang out, you want to do coke, and I'm not down for that now, but we could do something else. You want to go to a movie, or you want.
But the reality is that friend is going to be like, no. Like, they're going to be like, no, I don't want to do coke. So they're going to just go with someone else.
Right, exactly.
They're going to
Now
find
you've made
plenty.
it clear. It's not that I don't like you. I've just made this other change, and it's kind of, so we're not matching like we used to. Sometimes we just have to say, hey, I don't do this anymore. Or, I have a client who has some toxic friends who happen to be her fiance's best friends. So it makes it complicated. I have to spend time with my fiance and his best friends. And these are
I would never recommend
some
to
of our
allow your
social
girlfriend to have a
outings.
best
And so I said,
friend.
there is a way you can
Never.
absent yourself from the negative conversations, or where there's gossiping and backbiting. There's a way that you can do that shielding that Angela talked about. And then you bring forward topics that are positive. Like, I love your place. Did you decorate it yourself? I mean, you can choose to go down those paths, how you show up with your energy. But there are times when we're in circumstances that feels like we're beyond our control. We don't have 100% control of being at the family reunion, or being at your sister's wedding, or whatever those circumstances are, and you have to
But
bring yourself.
just to to finish my point, there's always a control, because you can choose not to go. Like I chose not to go to my father's funeral. Why? Because I know there was going to be full of bullshit and nonsense. I was like, I love you guys. I will see you, and I'll see them afterwards. Like, we have fun. But I was like, I'm not going to play out this nonsense. Like, you always have control. But now, whether you're going to execute that power that you have, that's a different story. And that's what I can help humans do. I can help them connect to that inner power so that they decide if they want to go, that's fine. If they do not want to go, that's also fine. Because everybody's different. Some humans are more, subtle. So it's totally fine. But if you really don't want to go to the wedding, let's say your sister is getting married and you really, for whatever reason, you do not want to go, then you should not go. And I will promote that a billion times. Just do not go.
And people learn as they go about what tools, what consequences, what does that do to the relationship dynamic at work or in your families. I'm not sure who wants to go next. Brian, are you next, SpecialK?
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah.
Thank you,
What I
John.
would say is, yes, for sure. Thanks, man. What I would say is, honestly, friends and family can hurt you worse than anyone else. I mean, I know I'm bringing up kind of the dark side of this, but they can kind of help you the most or hurt you the most. Like, really, you actually kind of have to be most vigilant in a way with the people closest to you, because if they start making bad decisions, they start drinking too much, they start yelling and screaming, if you get in this bad energy exchange, that's gonna dramatically mess you up. Like, strangers aren't gonna ruin your life, but your family could. Like, girlfriends could. This is actually where you have to be the most careful. So I think we tend as a society to kind of overlook that and ignore that a little bit, and we try to focus on the positive more, like, oh, these are great things we should all celebrate and cherish, and we should when they're positive. But you can also be in a negative energy exchange that you really actually do need to be ready to cut people off, even family, even girlfriends, even friends. If it gets to where you're like, my life is just going down, it's it's not going up at all because of this situation. I think people need to be ready to do that, and I think people need to be aware of that. It can be great too. It can be very positive, but I think it's important that people are honest about that.
So do you check in
So,
with how you're feeling? Like, I spent time with this person who's a family member and I feel bad. It's time to go over there. I don't want to go over there. Where do you find that threshold of, you know what? I'm thinking I got to make a change.
yeah, I mean, I would say if you're consistently feeling bad, if you're consistently in that negative energy exchange, you have to withdraw. If you can't handle that situation and turn it around, flip it around, you got to go. So um, again, one of my ex-girlfriends, she used to she really loved her sister, but she would cry and be upset whenever before she would go to see her, because her sister honestly always looked down on her. Her sister was way more successful in tons of different areas, made more money, had the nicer house, had the better set up marriage and the kids and all this stuff. And she would love her sister, but she would go there always feel bad about her situation relative to her. And I'd be like, I mean, honestly, why do you want to go there then? But she would still do it and stay in that negative energy exchange. Sometimes there's families where they invite you to the wedding or to the birthday just so they can mess with you. You're just like the family punching bag. If you're in that situation, you definitely should not be going.
Well, so recognizing that you have the permission to step out of
Yeah.
a family situation,
Yeah.
can I be a good person and stop talking to my father who never has anything good to say about me? Yes, you have to manage your own energy. As Jonathan is saying,
Yeah.
you're responsible for your own experience in your life. You have to step up
Absolutely.
and say, I'm not going to experience this anymore. You can be a good person and say, I'm limiting the interaction with this person.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to change you. I'm going to change my experience of you by limiting it or cutting it off. And you have a responsibility to live your life that way.
You gotta take care of yourself, your happiness, your energy first. Like if you're in any kind of relationship that's consistently dragging you down, something has to change. You either got to fix that relationship immediately, try setting that boundary and enforce it, or like you gotta go. Like that's my perspective on that. So
Hey, Maddie, can we
anybody,
invite you
yeah,
into this? Yeah, thoughts about friends and family and when there is this vibration separation where whatever this was. I mean, I think a lot of people will say, how was I born into this crazy family? And do I have to stay? You know, so maybe your time with your family gets completed when you're 25 or 30 and you're off in your world and making your own family. You have
It's
thoughts,
hard for me to.
tools for
It's
that.
difficult. It's difficult to know which elements, because there's the seen and there's the unseen, and it's difficult to know which topic to delve into here. But if we just go for the seen aspect of it, I think that it's very important for us to honor that we have epochs in our life. From one decade to the next, we completely change as human beings, and what acceptable in one decade is absolutely not acceptable in the next. And that the greatest limitations that we can put on any relationship is our expectations of them. And this goes for everything. Expectations create the biggest limitations in our lives, full stop. But as we go through the different stages of our healing journey and we go through our lives, there are some things that are acceptable that we mustn't accept as we move on. Otherwise, we're not putting out that frequency to say, I'm ready for the change. I'm responsible enough for the change that I'm trying to create within myself. For instance, if you're somebody who does not consume drugs, even if you used to, and now you don't, then you absolutely should not be around people that are doing drugs. And that's absolutely fundamental for your growth. Otherwise you're showing that you're not really responsible for that choice that you've made. Now, the issue here is that obviously we must shed off people as we go along, and this is a natural process. I even at the point where I stopped all of the bad behavior, I was born in the ghetto as well, and my upbringing, I could write a book about the things I went through as a young man, and in my 30s as well. I was involved in organized crime and all kinds of things like that, and the town that I was born into was like the Wild West. And so for me, that transition was quite radical, but I found myself, as I began my healing journey, I was still holding on to friendships and values of the past. They didn't just die instantly because I'd made a choice not to be that way anymore. It was a process, and in that shedding off, we also have to be careful that we don't become extremely callous, because just because a relationship doesn't serve you here doesn't mean that it may not serve you over here. Particularly with family, I spent the longest time with my own family putting blame onto them for certain situations. And I felt completely justified in that blame for so many years, until I achieved a certain level of healing. And I look back and I'm like, wow, man, that blame is mine to own. That's most definitely not theirs. But I couldn't see that at this point. And so, to shut doors permanently forever, gone, done, is also not a wise choice. We have to know that something may not serve us right now, and that's the choice we need to make. But then there's also the opposite side of this, which is where we hermetize ourselves. And this is just as damaging as having negative relationships. Having no relationships whatsoever is going to hurt you way more, because it's very easy to become comfortable in that position. And anybody who's been in a hermit stage will know how difficult it is to come out of it. You'll find yourself in a situation because when you're in your 20s or whatever, and you were totally social and you may have overdone it, and then 30s, 40s, you tone that down, but then maybe you have a breakup of a marriage or something like that, and you decide to go out and start being social again. You'll realize you're sat there on your own with no idea what to say to anybody. And I'm holding my hand up because I'm speaking from experience here, and this goes with children as well. And I've raised 2 generations of children, and some things work, some things don't work. But the most important thing is that we try. and that we hold to our own moral compass. We have to have that set of morals, and we have to live by those morals. And if any relationship is in conflict with your morals, then it's your responsibility to end that relationship permanently or temporarily. And that's kind of an overview of it. But there's so many more dynamics that go on to these things like this, because I myself, I experience, I just want to be loved. You know, and like every human being out there, I want to be loved. And so there are certain times where I find myself in positions where I may be looking for love in a place where it may not be given back to me in the same
In
way
all
that
the
I
wrong
need
places?
it.
Are you looking for
Yeah,
love
not
in
all the wrong places, but maybe just not quite right yet. Or, you know, I've just come out of another relationship just recently, and it was so difficult because we were still in love. But the dynamics, the love wasn't enough. Well, you know, I always thought in my life love is all you need, but actually that's not the case sometimes.
The Beatles were wrong, Maddie.
Yeah, you know,
Wrong.
sometimes it's a matter of timing. Sometimes, but to part in love is an incredibly difficult thing to do. You have to really have your head on your shoulders and know I'm doing this for my love of myself and for the love of that person. It's better for us to be apart than together at this point.
I
Very
love
difficult.
this concept that you talk about, Maddie, of sacred neutrality. That,
Yes.
you know, if you're come to a place where you say this person is on a journey in this trajectory, and now I feel myself separating in a different trajectory, to not be in a place of judgment, even if it's just it no longer works for me to be around you listening to you complain about your husband every minute of every day. I can't do the toxic negativity anymore, or whatever it is. This doesn't work for me, and so I'm making a choice for me. I'm not making a judgment about you. I'm the only one with a compass for me, and this doesn't work for me anymore.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to honor that and make some changes. You're not wrong, you're not bad. I don't have to necessarily stop loving you. I can't spend time with you anymore because I'm gonna go spend time over here. How do you
Yes.
have sort of a sacred neutral conversation with someone that says, you do you, I just can't do it anymore?
Well, you know, Jonathan spoke about selfishness, and it was a very important point, because selfishness is not a negative thing. It can be a negative expression, but selfishness really, you know, it just means you are focusing on the self. Selfishness can be positive. We have to be selfish in a way in order to be able to grow. Otherwise, we're into martyrdom, zealotry, and all that kind of stuff where we're just giving away our core frequency all over the place and having none of it to ourselves. But sacred neutrality, you know, this comes to the point where you don't give charge to a situation. Any situation is what it is, but it can be, you know, there's a charge, a polarity to any opinion and anything that's going on, and how much charge you give that is, you know, how much energy you're focusing onto that. So it's even in a situation like we talked about there with somebody who's just, you know, talk and ruining your day at work every single day. You know, you can still address that, as long as you're not personal about it, as long as it's not an attack, as long as you're not saying, right, I need to make this person feel like shit, you know, or I need to, you know, that might be effective, but there's going to be a karmic influence coming back to you there. There's going to be a bit of kickback. There's only a few laws in this universe, and one of them is what you put out comes back to you.
You want to try to do it clean in a sacred
exactly
way.
From a sacred neutral perspective, which means that you have applied your common moral code to this situation. You've made a decision and a choice as this is how I need to act in this situation, and then you're mindful that when you do act on this situation, you're not doing it with charge behind it. If that person feels charge and senses charge behind it, well, that's their own unhealed traumas coming out there. That's not your responsibility. But as long as you remain sacred neutral, and what comes back at you as well, don't take it personal if possible, unless it's an attack, in which case, you know, you just have to work on removing that charge later down the line.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Hey, Angela, you want to chime in?
You know, I was meditating the other day, and I thought, wow, I need to talk about relationships. And there was a course I had created about relationships about 10 years ago. And then Myrna said, let's do a roundtable on the relationships. And I said, okay. The universe has already told me what to talk about today. And so I came prepared, so to speak, with pre-given notes, because for me, I work as much with the unseen as I do with the seen these days. And when I was talking about having shielding, that was, I don't know how many years ago. No, rocks were young in my career, long time ago. And I have worked and worked and worked on myself and my frequency and raising it so that I look at these things and I think, yeah, those tools really served me, but I don't use shields anymore. I just beam out the light frequency I am, and people either are attracted to it like moths, or they're repelled from it because it doesn't compute to them. And I don't find myself in circumstances where I have friendships or even relationships within my family anymore, where all that BS is happening and I have to have shielding up anymore. I told y'all earlier that I had, dysfunctional family upbringing and all that kind of thing. I had an addicted father. Actually, my mother was also emotionally addicted in her own way and in codependent situation. And I was, as you pointed out, Maddie, kind of a peacekeeper. So I know, Jonathan, you have the put him in the accountability zone, and I'm more, let's just get the hell out of this. Let's go read a book and escape, and let's chill, and I'll study
I'll
philosophy.
move to Texas.
I'll try to read Yogananda's autobiography. I'll try to read the sacred text and make some sense of it. It's funny when you showed earlier, Myrna, that meme where it was the Family Guy and they were like, here's the perfect or the ideal family and here's the reality. In my attempt of trying to go through this healing journey that I had to get to where I am now, where I feel like all those sacred contracts have been completed. I even did an amazing experience physically in my body with surgery to heal ancestral issues. That's part of the purpose in my journey in this lifetime. So I can speak to those things, obviously, about the unseen quite a bit. But that meme was like hilarious to me because I remember having a conversation with a therapist. This was not long after my own daughter was born, and I realized just how unconscious my parents were and how damaged as a result we were, my siblings and I, and how we all had our own different reactions to it and the way we've taken our journeys and our healing journeys through our life. And I remember telling the therapist, because I was just really like trying to come to terms with it. I thought I healed it. And, you go through periods of your life when you're like, I think I healed it. I think I'm ready to forgive. And I am. And then you go through something else and the therapist warned me, you'll be triggered again. Something will come up. That's what'll happen. It's not like we can say you're going to have 5 different sessions and then bam, you're done. It's a process through your life. And so here I am having a conversation with this therapist, and I'm in a whining mode. I say, I just wish I had a normal family. I just wish it could be normal. And he looked at me and he said, normal, there's no such thing as that. It's the setting on a washing machine and that's it. And I'm like, it was like, you're right. You're so right. How can forgiveness and letting go of things doesn't have anything with trying to change the past or trying to get what you don't have or trying to create that person into the ideal you have. It's just about really taking care of yourself. And one of the things that I was meditating about this morning before we got into this meeting together, it came into me, which was the sense that I have of a realization I had several years ago. I was talking to my sister again about her tragic situation with her daughter. And I said, the deal is people can love as much as they have a capacity for love. And you have a capacity for love that is equal to the capacity of self-love. So you can't really love someone else unless you love yourself, but you can love someone else to the degree that you love yourself, right?
Wow, absolutely.
And so it was like a big realization. And she was like, you're so right. And she doesn't love herself and, that kind of thing. So when we get rid of these lower frequency emotions that drive our life, the trauma-based relationship interactions that we have that are based on our own trauma, or they have their own experiences based on their trauma, you can't predict that you're going to say something or you're going to be in a way with them that you understand everything they've been through. One day we'll have Eden consciousness again. I'm working on it myself and bringing Eden consciousness here while I'm still living on this planet in this dense energy. I'm working on it. But that maybe at that point we'll have telepathy. And I can tell you that even if I got into someone's mind and I heard those telepathy thoughts, I still would not understand them because I did not share their journey and their experiences. So when it comes to the sacred neutrality that you asked Maddie about, I feel like that's what's really important. And I respect, Jonathan, that you said people need to be held accountable, but I don't know if it's my role to actually be the one to hold them accountable as much as just showing up and being like a beam of light and living with integrity and by example that can snap them into accountability or not. They can choose that or not. And one of the conversations I had with my sister, who she and I shared, we like less than 2 years apart in age, so we're very similar in our shared experience of going through the similar abuses that we did at our father's hand and so forth. Her response was very different. Her response is very much activist and accountable. And if she sees someone fussing at someone in the grocery store and that she thinks it's unfair, she'll answer herself. You heard us talk about, Justin said, I'll get in front of the person in the bar. I'm the peacemaker, in other words. I'm like, let's just like get along or let's not have the experience. Let's go do our own thing. That's usually my approach, right? So we had a conversation and I said, just imagine you're like Plato's cave and all the people are in Plato's cave and the shadows are on the wall and they're dealing with their own stuff and their own illusion. She goes, I want to go in the cave and I want to bring the light to them and show them that there's light and they don't have to look at the shadows. And I said, well, that's cool that you have that role. My role is I want to stand at the mouth of the cave with the light. And as they come out of the cave, they go, yeah, I figured it out myself and I'm out of the cave. Which way do I go? And I go, there, go that way. So this is kind of my approach to my relationships with everyone, the family, the friends, even the work, everyone. And you can't help it. Sometimes they will want to just chew you up and spit you out. And I don't know if you've ever been divorced by a friend or divorced by a family member, spouse or otherwise. And I have. You will go through this experience where you think, gee, I got to take this personally. But at the same time, it's a growth experience. And I am going to stand by what I say. We have sacred contracts with each other. And even Buddha said this. He said, the relationships you have in your life are like mirrors to you. They aren't there for themselves all the time. They're there for you to reflect on yourself, what you can do and you can grow from it. So my experience of all of this is such a growth trajectory to go from a point of view where I can sit there in a conference room and cry because someone just hurt my feelings and was like nice. Or the time I was in college and my roommate was hitting on my boyfriend, like literally hitting on my boyfriend in front of me. And I called her out on it. And she says to me, you're so intimidating, Angela. And I'm like the peacemaker. I'm the doughy one, right? I mean, I'm never in anyone's grill.
She crossed a boundary.
Yeah, she crossed a boundary and I was just calling her out on it. And she says, Angela, you're just so intimidating. I said, what do you mean, me? And she goes, yeah, you just always expect everybody to be always at their best. And sometimes I just don't want to be at my best. So
Clearly, this is your fault. It's all your fault, Angela.
Yeah, just show up and be you, right? So I the only thing as far as note taking, that if I don't share it, I'm thinking my angel team will probably say, hey, Angela, why aren't you sharing this? Is this thing that came through the word perfect. Okay. And to me, that Eden consciousness is more that perfection that we're aiming for, where things are more harmonious and relationship conflict and that binary scenario we get into, there could be some more harmony if we live in that kind of space. And how do we do that? We achieve that through a non-judgmentalism. And when I feel the bliss of the universe, raining down on me, which feels like love raining down on me, as the Who put it, it really is more like, it feels like love, but what it is sacred neutrality. It's acceptance. And the best thing we can do in any of our relationships is just accept people for who they are, what they're doing, and where they are, because they are sovereign beings themselves, just like we are. And Maddie, I listened to you last week when you did the round table and you said, don't step on people's journey. And that's exactly what I mean. So when a perfect came through, the word came through, because I'm very word oriented. the word came through perfect, I was like, what do they mean by saying perfect? What does my team, my guides mean by saying perfect? And what they meant was shalom,
Mhm,
perfect
mhm,
Eden consciousness. So if
mhm.
we went around like greeting people with namaste, I recognize the sovereignty in you. You know, my sovereignty recognizes your sovereignty. Or if we went around greeting people with shalom,
Mhm,
peace,
mhm.
and basically wishing upon them Eden consciousness because we were ourselves working on that. Whoa, would we get there finally? Would we get to there to where David Hawkins was trying to get us up that ladder of frequency, right? To enlightenment, so to speak.
Mhm.
So I think relationships are the part of the, I mean, that's like the main reason we're here. We broke away from this divine, like, if you accept the premise of monism, we're in this divine consciousness. We break down into the individuated consciousnesses that we are, into this dense place that we are.
Mhm.
And then you came from that same space, boop, 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 and here you are. And now we get to interact with each other. We are one somewhere, but here we're different and interact with each other.
Mhm.
What a cool, badass way to learn.
Oh, I've got to chime in here. I have to chime in. You're speaking my
And then
language.
Maddie,
I know, Maddie. I thought we'd jive on this.
I was just gonna say, I know Maddie, when you're done, you have to jump, so go whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm finished. That was my final point because they
the
said
idea of perfection is that here we are perfectly imperfect. And there's a reason to that, because
Mhm.
most people are chasing this idea of unity consciousness, this idea of a collective that is completely held and together. Now, the thing is that the awakening itself, what we're going through, is an individual process. There's no mass thing. It's not going to happen at once. And the reason for the imperfections and the reason that we're perfectly imperfect is because if there isn't charge and polarity, if there isn't source connection, source disconnection, then there's no growth. There's no evolution. So you have to have two or more different types of experience in order for spiritual growth. This is why, we think to ourselves, well, if my life was just absolutely perfect, what would it be? It would be mundane and pointless.
yes.
If you lived in absolute bliss and harmony for 2-3 weeks, you'd be like, oh God, let me go back to the beer and pizza and sex.
Yeah.
It would drive you
We
insane.
like it in the movies, we like it in our novels, we like it in our lives. I mean, we like drama.
Exactly. And it's that charge that creates growth within us. We'll make mistakes, we rectify the mistakes. We make mistakes, we rectify the mistakes, and thus we grow. And that's what we're doing on a collective and an uncollective level. And that is the name of the game here. So it really is, once again, it just comes down to accountability and responsibility. And there's another thing here, isn't there, as well, Angela, where sometimes we'll have situations where you're like, why did the universe do that to me? Why do you hate me so much, universe? Or, this is forced evolution. And if you're not paying attention, if you're on a trajectory and you're on a healing journey, and that the universe needs you to make a certain change, I say the word universe, but really it's ourselves and higher aspects of ourselves. And we need to make a change, but we're just not making that change in our lives. And we're praying for the correct change that we want. We're asking for that in our process. Then the universe sometimes will come and make it happen, and that's always an uncomfortable process. And yet, as human beings, because we have this polarity view within us, we quite often cry our eyes out at that process, where we don't realize, well, this is exactly what you need right now. And so, again, it comes down to responsibility, and that's what this is all about: personal responsibility.
Man, that was great. Just to add a quick point, I was watching something last night, and one of the biggest lies that came out of the 60s was this hedonistic, we're here on this earth to seek pleasure alone. And we're meant to have a challenge that's worthy to stretch us in life, and we're supposed to have tension. It forces us to grow. And if you look at the way the school systems have changed over the years, we used to have literature that people could identify with, like a hero in a story. Are you Hercules? We would read, old fables and things like that. And they were meant for us to identify with courage and character. And so I think that's where society has kind of spun us into a place where we don't have identity anymore. And so you know, I've been hedonistic before, and you know, you had to go through it to see how unfulfilling it was. And so I don't really judge people too much, you know, that don't have the same frequency, so to speak, because the work that I've done has been unbelievably difficult. And you know, it's a little bit too much for a lot of people, to be honest with you. That's okay.
I really appreciate that.
I'm going to have to go, guys. I'm really sorry. I've got to go.
Okay.
I've got a child's birthday, and I'm the chef, so everybody's hungry, and I'm getting messages come through. It's
Happy
been wonderful.
birthday,
Okay.
child. Thanks
All
for
right.
joining us.
See you,
Maddie.
Maddie.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you.
Listen, we're going to round up in like 15 minutes and we'll go through the last few little humorous slides.
Sure.
But I so appreciate everybody's feedback about honoring another person's journey, even when it's now out of sync with our own. And I remember as a little kid thinking, why are all these other people in the world? Like, what's the point of this? Why do we have so many other people and they all have different points of view and they live in different countries and they like different food? What is the point of all of this? And as Angela says, when you get into a relationship and your unhealed places are reflected back to you from the relationship you're in, you're like, oh, that's what all these other people are for. They show me parts of myself to work on. Thanks a lot, pal. You know, so yeah, I think we all grow in our journeys and recognize there are meditation teachers who tell you after a while you drop all the meditation tools because you just have, you know, you have trained yourself to drop into a meditative state. But in the beginning, you do your breathing and you do your concentration, you might do your mantra, and then eventually that falls away. And I think
it's
with
a
these,
waking meditation, your whole life is a meditation.
Yeah.
St. Benedict talked about that. When you're washing the dishes,
yeah,
you know, it's a mundane daily task.
Yeah.
Bring your consciousness into it and make it mindful and bring, you know, your experience to just that. Everything
I
can
think with these relationship tools, eventually they fall away also because we've just done enough time in our journey that, oh, okay, I recognize what this is, and this is what's working for me and what's not, and this is how I say it. Okay, good for you. Go with God. You know, we're gonna walk together for a while, and then our walk is complete. And you recognize those things without having a lot of serious contemplation or a lot of friction. But as you're learning the tools, you're like, why? What do I do? Why is this not working? So I appreciate our feedback. Let's go through our last little bit of slides real quick. And let's see. In our screen. Okay, share. Okay, now we're going to go to our next one. These romantic relationships, our toughest ones. I love this little baby that's killing it at the top. You know, I saw my crush. I told my crush that I love her. Oh, and the baby says she replied that she loves me too. So, you know, in the beginning of relationships, especially romantic ones, there's that heightened emotion, that feeling of, oh, this connection is so amazing. To the left, we have the meme of men only think of one thing. And here's a picture of what the man is thinking about. Everyone's counting on me. I'm so tired. I need to do better. I can't give up. I just have to keep going. And so sometimes we apply blanket ideas to the opposite sex or to people in our life, and that's in fact not at all what's going on. And then this last one I love about men that are dating. What my friends think, he's forever going to be alone. What society thinks I do, he's a nerd at a computer. And what my parents think I do, he's on the internet. He does something on the internet. What I'm told I should do, build a happy family. You're not fulfilled unless you build a happy family. And then what I think I do, I think I'm in a love relationship with someone. I think this is where we're at. And then what I actually do, pound my keyboard because for the umpteenth time, this thing didn't work out. So, you know, we all have these experiences where this is how it started. This is how it's going. We've seen all those memes, but, you know, having cycled through a few relationships, you get to a point where you recognize, okay, at least what's working for me, I can identify, and I want more of this, and I know how to talk about it. This is not working for me, and I can identify that, and I know how to talk about it. And then what is our Venn diagram crossover, you know, with our romantic relationships? And some things work until they don't, and then we recognize they don't work anymore. And so, that's what happened. Sometimes you get to the end of the string. Other times they work for a long time. I recently met a cute couple from Ireland. They've been married like 56 years. It's one of those couples, they now look like each other. Like if they're not in matching t-shirts, but I think maybe that happens next year, that they're actually in matching t-shirts, but they're now the same height and they both have the same length of gray hair. And they are, practically the same person. They have their tea together and they watch their show together and they talk about the news together. So that's the trajectory of their married life, what they wanted, and they made it happen for more than 50 years, and good for them. That's not the trajectory for everyone. And I think of recognizing for ourselves what's right for us now, and when something is no longer right, that's kind of the trick of the relationship dynamic. Does anybody want to jump in here, or does
Yeah,
okay,
let me jump in because my laptop's not charging. It might die in
Also,
10 or 15 minutes here.
Also, according
What's
to
that?
Jonathan, you're our resident player, so you're going to have had the most
Oh.
romantic relationships, right?
No, Jonathan's the player, or Justin.
Just kidding.
But yeah, so let me just make a few quick points here. I kind of have some general points about, I think, the culture, societal issues that sort of play into this. From my perspective, I think just men and women just don't see eye to eye on just a lot of things now. There's kind of like probably a bigger divide than maybe there's been ever before. I don't know. You have like feminist content, which is really big. You kind of have like red pill, which is sort of like almost like a male version of feminism content. And there's just a really big divide now. I also think a big problem is people don't know what they want. Like, I think people need to get really, really clear on what they want. Not everyone wants marriage now. Not everyone even wants a relationship now. You have situationships now. You have just people just do hookups on Tinder all the time now. You have people just party and do whatever. Like, so I think people need to get really clear on what they want before they kind of pursue these things. I think that's a big issue. Sometimes one person knows what they want, but the other person in the relationship doesn't. And yeah, I don't know what you guys think about all that, but I think there's a lot of, I even saw a video, which is really interesting. This girl was saying she watched a video on Instagram. She showed her boyfriend the top comments on her feed, and it was totally different comments. Then her boyfriend loaded up the same video on his phone, completely different comments from totally different perspectives. So we're literally being fed like different realities through our phones, through social media, through Instagram. So that like kind of spreads people further apart in some ways. Like she'll get comments that are just like way more understanding of the woman's perspective. On his phone, he gets comments that are way more understanding of the man's perspective as the top comments. Because like apps like Instagram are curating people's feeds. So it's sort of creating these different reality bubbles that we live in now.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to figure out ways to like merge them and sort of see eye to eye. I think that's an issue that's going on in society, but
I appreciate that.
whatever. Yeah.
I want to invite Angela to talk a little bit about conscious listening, because I think I was telling Justin the other day that I saw this little short on YouTube where a woman said, I want to go out and have ice cream, to her boyfriend. He's like, oh, well, I'm just going to stay in and finish my game. And she's like, so you don't want to go out with me? He's like, I didn't say that. Well, if it's really important, I'll go out with you. I won't have any ice cream. She's like, well, if you don't eat ice cream with me, what's the point of going out? And now they're talking so far past each other. And then she turns and she has like a person standing as the female brain translator. Well, if you don't have ice cream with me, I go out and eat ice cream by myself. I'm a fat pig that nobody will ever love. And I'm like, what the hell is going on in your brain? And this is the translation. And then the translator looks over at the boyfriend, who now has a male translator next to him. And he's like, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. I said I'd go, but now she doesn't want to go. How do I get out of this? Like, what's going on? So I think there's so much unsaid. We pour, gasoline on a fire when we listen to the comments and we get into really vertical content about men are bad or women are bad or men are great or women are great. Do you want to chat for a minute about conscious listening as a tool? And then we can just pop in, if we have anything
Oh,
else.
yeah. And if anybody's interested in doing a deeper dive about this, that's one of the courses that I created for the Life Designed membership course library. But it's to me, I've been teaching a class for leaders and aspiring leaders since 2011, off and on, for the University of Texas, and like a couple of times a year. So I kind of dip into this and refresh myself on active listening. What's active listening? Because there's nothing easier. When you teach something, you learn it again and again and again and going deeper. But really, that's just using the tools of really attuning and really suspending judgment, suspending distractions, and being very fully present. To me, it's almost like you have to practice mindfulness when you really are actively listening to another. So to me, conscious listening is just that. Now, in the course that I came up with there, I went a little deeper, and I talked about listening at the end, the level of energy. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of work to understand, to discern. This is my egoic mental construct that's telling me things and guiding me out of fear,
Past relationships, your overlay of what you think.
Yeah, unconscious conditioning. This is the way it's always been done in my family, so therefore I've kind of absorbed it, so this is the way I do it, kind of thing. That construct versus your true intuitive wise self, and that's kind of listening at more, if you want to call it, the heart level versus the head level. So instead of being all concerned about the intellectual side of it, you really are getting into the heart space side of it and connecting with another. It takes a lot of work to do that, to get to that level of discernment that you can then listen at that level, but it's profound when you can.
Well, and I think people love to be heard. One of the common complaints of men, I think, is that women won't stop talking. I want to tell you about this thing that happened at work. An hour later, she's still talking about the thing that happened at work. And you're like, when can we be done with the thing that happened? I've been listening for an hour. Not that Brian ever tells me this, like, stop talking, Mom. So we we have an understanding, but sometimes people just want to be heard, and you can manage relationship boundaries around that. And as often as not, men want to get to the bottom line and solve whatever it is. Like,
not always, though. You can have a gender situation where that's different, because I was in a 28-year relationship where he was very much more extroverted and talkative than I was. Very much, and wanted to be the center of the conversation. And we even teased that we were on that planet, that person's planet, name in front of it, planet, and not just me, his friends too. I don't think this is necessarily just a gender thing.
Sure, no, I agree. And I think that when you can practice active listening, you say, okay, so let's spend 30 minutes and I want to hear about the thing you want to talk about, our relationship, what you want to do about your job, whatever it is, male or female. And then you reflect back what you heard. And so that's one of the keys of the active listening tool is, okay, so this woman you're talking about, she's always mean to you and you don't have a good relationship. Yeah, that's Susie in a nutshell. Okay, I got that part. What else? And you just kind of reflect back that you got fully heard about the thing. And it just changes the dynamic of you were heard. Now it can be enough that you just got heard. Like, I don't want you to tell me to do anything about it. I just had to get it off my chest. Okay, well, we've done that. Okay, we're good. Or now what do I do about it? Oh, okay, so now we're active problem solving. So I can give you some ideas about that. But if you can consciously listen so the other person is heard, and now you're at an intersection, are we going to problem solve this, or you just needed to get it off your chest? Okay, well, that's what we did. And that can be very positive in a relationship dynamic, that you learn how to listen to each other and reflect back that they were heard.
I admire my daughter for that reason. With her boyfriend, she does this where she'll say, okay, honey, I just got to verbally dump this out. I don't need you to help me fix it. I just need to say it. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to be your sounding board. Go ahead. So that communication is important.
Yes. Jonathan, do you have some thoughts as you work with men, especially in relationships, about communication styles and so many unspoken expectations? And I know when I watch content, it's like, he has to buy me a $200 dinner or he's not worth going out with me. Like, where did that come from? I'm trying to sort out the expectations, what's true and what's not true. How do you help people do that?
I do have a lot of stuff to say when it comes to male-female relationships, because I spent most of my adult life paying so much attention to the point that it was unbelievably, it became like an obsession at some point. So I do have some points. The main point that I can say when it comes to female-male relationships is that, first of all, they're two completely different universes. The female and the male are, it's like the chimpanzee and the human. It's like 0.1% or like 1 point something percent difference, but it makes a huge difference, right? So female and male, just think about it. They're like two different species. All like, it's so different, especially when it comes to how they process information, emotions. So yes, if you decide as a grown-up adult to be in a relationship, you must be consciously aware that you are going to have to understand and pay a lot of attention, and that comes from the idea of love, which is putting someone in front of yourself. Like, you're going to have to pay a lot of attention and emotion into understanding the other person. As a male, if you're not ready to do that, you might as well just keep on dating forever and just like fuck around. That I will recommend that 1000%. If you're ready to have a relationship, however, you must understand that females are just a whole different kind of creatures, and they're so cute. And same goes for the female. If the female is not ready to understand that males are just completely different when it comes to how they process information and how they see many things, they might as well just choose not to get into a relationship.
I follow a family coach. He helps men with young families, balance everything. One of the perspectives he has, and I don't know if this is helpful for you to share your perspective, Jonathan, but he said, I don't have to understand women. I have to understand the one woman I married. Like, I don't have the universe of women to figure out. I get the one in front of me. That's the one I have to figure out. She doesn't have to understand all men. She has to learn to understand the one she married. So sometimes that like reduces the order of difficulty. It's like the one I'm in relationship, like you say, this is where I bring my focus. This is the part I have to understand.
You can take the pressure off.
It is true. I will actually agree with that point, because it will help you so much instead of like diversifying your attention. However, if it's such a responsibility, like, I don't think humans pay that much attention when it comes to like the amount of like energy and actual everything that they're going to share in a relationship. It's so much. It's so much detail.
A romantic
humans
relationship is your primary relationship too, so maybe it
s-
warrants that level of care and that level of attention.
Yeah, and especially because it actually makes it makes you, it's like it makes you into two. Like, if you have someone that you care for, it's automatically you're diversifying your attention. The attention that you could be taking to yourself, now it's into the partner or the girlfriend or the boyfriend, the wife or the husband. So it is so much, it's a responsibility, it's a lot. Now, if you're ready to take that on, that's fine. But the thing is, what I find out is that most humans, they're not even ready to like digest how much they have to let go of themselves to accommodate the other human like well-being in front of themselves. And the reality is that, because I have my share of relationships and like not like situationships, of course. So I will something that I will recommend for men, because women don't have this problem. Women, they always have many options, right? Like a female, she's born, she's killed, she will always have this many men. Now she will have to choose the best possible option that she thinks is the best option, but she always has many options. There's no woman on the planet that has no option. That doesn't exist. For the man, it's different. Men, they have to work on themselves to create options. So I would say, on the male side, if you do not have many options, you should not get into a relationship, because that will put you in a situation that is just not right.
One of the tricky things I think in relationships, like we've talked about work relationships, friends and family, it feels like a test drive. Like you're learning to drive the car, but you're not really good at parallel parking yet. Or you've gotten into the bad habit of the California rolling stop, where you kind of sort of thought about stopping at that stop sign and then you pick up speed again. As we learn as we go, we learn new things we didn't know, and sometimes we get in bad habits. And so I think relationships are a place where the only way to learn is sometimes in the doing of a relationship. So what are your thoughts about, okay, I want love in my life, I'm going to learn about relationships by being in one?
You have to, and the moment you decide to being in one, you must open yourself to the idea that you are going to put someone well-being first, and that takes a lot. It's not easy. So the moment you decide that you're going to be in a relationship, if you really want it to work, you're going to put somebody else's well-being before yourself. That's a lot. It's not easy to do, and that's the thing. Most humans, they do not really want to do that. They don't want to accommodate somebody else's well-being before themselves. It sounds like alien, you know.
I think that comes to where people do the lists, where they say, I need a man who's this and this and this and this, or I need a woman who's this and this. So it's like, here's my recipe of how this is going to work for me. You have to show up with this diagram I drew. Here's my blueprint for you. Show up
I
and this is my blueprint. And it's like, they're going to be who they are. Obviously, there's
yeah.
energy exchange that this makes sense to explore, but you're not going to design them like you did a computer program.
No, and I
Mhm.
agree 1 billion% with that. I absolutely agree. It's true. And it's actually so true that we must have an idea of what we want. For example, let's say that I want, hypothetically speaking, let's say that I want to have a woman that is going to have kids and then is going to build a family with me. I will not going to go to the strip club and get a girlfriend at the strip club to build that fantasy that I have or that idea of relationship. That will be the stupidest thing on the planet. Same for the girl. If she wants a husband that is going to be loyal and is going to be for her, she's not going to go to a one of these how do they call it, like girls night out trips in Vegas with a male stripper, and she's going to make him the husband. There has to be, again, everything's come down to accountability. What do you want? It's great to have a picture.
Mhm.
It's great to have a picture of what is it that we want.
Mhm.
From there you can work on. But definitely in relationships, you must, at some point, you're going to have to deal with the actual reality that you have to accommodate somebody else's needs and accepting that you have needs. The only reason personally that I have a relationship is because I have certain needs and I know what my needs are. Most humans are not conscious of what their needs are, which is something that I can help them with hypnosis. We can go deeper into see what's the actual need. Like, why do you want the relationship? Like, I know what my needs are. So that's why I selected the woman that I'm with. And the woman that I'm with, she has some needs, and she selected me.
Yeah. I want to leave on this note. I think that, you know, Jonathan, I love your phrase that your problems are gifts, that you make friends with problems. And I think we found that in relationships too. Sometimes that person is going to help us heal a trauma we haven't been paying attention to, but that's where the problem shows up, or that's where the difficulty shows up. And it's a gift that we get a chance to work on that with someone we care about and maybe do that healing, you know, but those problems in relationships can be gifts. It's a point of growth. You're at an intersection where you can grow with someone you like and care about. Why not solve your problems with someone you like and care about? So, but yes, I think sometimes like, oh, we have this problem. It's like, oh, good. You embrace the gift of it. So would you like a final thought? And then Angela, a final thought?
Yes, that is true. It is important to know that you're going to have a lot of problems, but the human that you choose to, if you want to be in a relationship, there is going to be always tension, and you have to learn, you must learn. And this is when I will rather work with males, because the responsibility always comes down to the male, because we are the males. Females are cute. They're like the most beautiful creatures on the planet. The
I know
male
that's
is
true of Angela and I, so I'm just going to take the blanket statement. Okay, go ahead.
but males, we are the ones that have this extra responsibility to learn and like take care of things. So one of the things that you have to take care of as a male, if you're going to be choosing to have a relationship, is learning how to like ride the waves of the female energy, because female energy is chaotic. It's always changing. It's not always like male. It's like you can go like this, no problem. Male is no problem. Females, they're so cute. It's all over the place. One day they're so fine, and the next day, who knows?
There's a gift for you in there. It keeps life
Yes,
exciting,
and you
Jonathan. There's a gift for you in there.
Believe me, I love it. That's why I choose to have a girlfriend. The thing is, you have to be very responsible and conscious that you have to learn how to make the best out of it, and how to like actually manage, because it's a lot of management. So in relationships, men have a lot of stuff to learn, a lot.
Well,
So
that's
yes,
good. And they can work with people like you for this too.
of
So
course.
thank you. So Angela, do you have a final thought? And thank you guys. I know people have had to go. We ran really long today, so go ahead.
So Jonathan, I love the male perspective. That's fascinating what you're saying, because I think that women do need to learn too, because the tendency that I know women in my generation had and were taught was, well, just pick a guy and then change him, shape him, train him.
I know.
You know,
I know.
and that's not cool, because
no, like you have to train him like it's a circus seal or something. Yeah. Oh no, you just change him.
And I never subscribed to that. I thought that was just bogus. And so because ultimately the truth in my heart that has now really burst out. And
just to make a point, you might end up being able to train him, but the moment you train him, you will not be attracted to him, and that's the end of the relationship.
Yeah,
so it doesn't work. Believe me, trust me, I know better.
Like, you were attracted to this, why would you want to change what you were attracted to? It just was never logical to me.
Yeah.
But I do know others, peers of mine, who've said, yeah, I trained him and then he divorced me, so I trained him for the next person, you know, whatever. It's like, whatever, that's ridiculous. So I think there's just these different perspectives. I think romantic relationships are interesting because there's a lot more going on there besides just, I mean, yes, there's a sacred contract, all of that. But if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, the recognition is that as human beings, we are not static. Maddie had mentioned that earlier, and that you're in different decades of your life. And so what happens in a long-term relationship, especially a primary romantic relationship that you're in for a while, you change, the other person changes. Sometimes you're not changing and on a trajectory at the same time. And so the question is, how conscious are you, and how good are you of then maybe it goes into love, or maybe it goes into the feeling of compassion or whatever, that you're there for the other person, even if you're not on the same page as that other person, you're moving along at different ways and different needs. It's funny you say that we're chaotic, but frankly, we're pretty predictable. Every month, the same thing happens over and over and over again for years, until you hit like menopause, which is what I'm going through. And then it's chaotic because there's no ability anymore.
So you are agreeing that it's
feel and
feminine
how I'm
energy, it's chaotic in nature. Male, they don't have to go through that. So it's just stays. It's something to
just saying.
understand. It's important to understand.
I'm just
Honestly,
saying, there are
it's
cycles
extremely
and
important.
But women can get into a state of predictability around this, and if they have self-awareness, and they can communicate this to you, the man. They can say, this is where I am, this is where my head is, this is what's happening. But many of them are not tuned. They're not attuned to what's going on in their own bodies, their own biological clock. Men are not often attuned to their own biological clock. And why are we having romantic relationships in the first place? What are the needs? Well, if we want to really get to the animalistic drive, it's because we want to procreate and create families and more people. I mean, ultimately, that's one of the dynamics of having a relationship. Now, as I get later in my life, and I've done that and been there, my whole reason and needs for a relationship are totally different than when they were when I was in my 20s and 30s. Very different. And my kid is 30 now, so
the epochs of your life generation, and being conscious of what you need now and being able to express it, being able to hear your potential partner and them to hear you. And, when it's working, it's fantastic. When it's not working, we learn a lot. So any final thought, Jonathan? Thank you guys so much for hanging out this late hour.
It's great. It's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. But yes, when it comes to female-male relationships, like we were talking, identifying the needs, that is key. Because if you do not know your needs, that's the recipe for disaster.
Well, and also your partner is now trying to imagine what they are because you can't communicate with them. Like, I'm going to picture in my head what you need, but I gave you this. They're like, I didn't want that. Well, how would I know you didn't tell me? So
let's say that you're someone that is horny all the time and just wants to have sex. But then the other party, she's like, well, no, I'm in a different area of my life, and then it's like that's non-compatible, or vice versa. So you have to know where you are, what your needs are. Once you communicate your needs, which is what most people don't do. If you actually communicate your needs, to communicate them, first you have to identify them, which is another story. That's a whole different realm. Identify your deepest needs. Where your daddy issues come from, where your mommy issues come from, where everything comes from. What your relationship with dad? What do you think you have this relationship? Have you ever thought about your relationship with dad? And like all the deepest things, like I'm talking about like the 98% of the things that you are continuously unaware of. Once you go deep into that, then this is what I want, this is what I need. And then you communicate that to the other human, and then they will either say, no, I cannot fulfill those needs, I cannot be loyal, or I cannot do this or that. And that's totally fine. But there will be plenty of humans that will be like, of course that I can fulfill those needs. And then they will share their needs. And if it matches, that's fine.
We have enough crossover. Yeah.
Yes. But yes, identifying the needs, it's key. That's the main thing.
Wonderful. Well, it's been delightful to spend time with you guys. And I know we ran long, but I probably was foolish to think we could cover 3 areas of relationship in one, because it's probably 3 different meetings. But thanks again so much. We'll upload it to YouTube. We'll share the link. And everyone, if you want to visit alifedesign.org, we have lots of great courses, and you can contact our coaches Also, we'll give information down below how to reach out to people directly. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good evening. See you
Namaskaram,
next time.
everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.